doing, guys? Welcome to today's Friday Waffle. Weather-wise, it's winter, so it's getting cold, it's getting dark. It feels like it's going to be dark all the time just now, but you know what? That's we should be used to it being up here in Scotland or indeed the UK. What have I been up to this week? Well, as usual, guys, quick update on the job front. They were interviewing for the second job that I went for. As you probably know, I didn't get the first job. I've been waiting to find out about the second job. They've been interviewing this week, and I didn't know whether I was going to get another interview or whether the original interview I had was going to suffice. So I contacted HR and they told me that I didn't have to get re-interviewed, and they're going to make their decision beginning of next week. Now, I was thinking that could possibly be good news, that they don't want to re-interview me, because if I didn't get the job, then technically I think they would have to have given me a second interview, an interview for the job that I'm applying for, the second job that I'm applying for, but they've chosen not to. Is that good news? I don't know, we'll find out. Apparently we should know by Tuesday of next week, so by the time you're watching the Friday Waffle next week, I'll know where I stand. I mean, it's just been going on for, this is almost 2 months now, and as anybody that's been in this position, sometimes it's just the not knowing that's the worst part, because your mind's working overtime. You're constantly wondering, you know, I might not have a job, might have a job. You just really don't know where you're going to stand, and you know, it's everyone else out with this situation is talking about Christmas or looking forward to Christmas and what we're going to have for Christmas dinner, and you know, it's hard to focus on anything really until I know where I stand. So anyway, guys, that's all I'm going to talk about in the job front. I should hopefully know by next week, early next week, where I stand. So anyway, that's that. Gaming wise, since I've got a fair bit of spare time, shall we say, on my hands, I've been really getting into Grand Theft Auto 5 on the PlayStation 4. Now, it's the first time I've really played a Grand Theft Auto game, and I've got to say I'm absolutely loving it. I mean, seriously, it is. I'm tempted to do a sort of a not even so much a 10-minute waffle, but I'm tempted just to play it and talk. It's an incredible game. For me, it's probably, I would say it's my favourite when I say next gen or current gen, it's my favourite game of probably that's come out in the last probably 10 years. It's mind blowing. I mean, you can go on a jet ski in the ocean, you can take a yacht, you can go out to sea, watch the sunset, you can drive up a mountain in a golf buggy, you can play 9 holes of golf, you can go to a strip club, you can just do anything. I mean, it's unbelievable. Seriously, I was playing around the golf, and whilst it's not quite as deep as like a Tiger Woods game, it's, you know, you play 9 holes of golf, and it just absolutely blows my mind how they can put together a game as intense and as deep as Grand Theft Auto 5. So do yourself a favour, guys, if you've got a 360, a PlayStation 3, or lucky enough to have a PS4, Xbox, go and get Grand Theft Auto 5. I wasn't a fan of it. It's an incredible game. One word of warning, again, because I've never really played a Grand Theft Auto game prior to this, the violence is pretty in your face. It is very, very violent, and obviously with the more realistic graphics now, it is pretty graphic. There's a lot of sexual innuendos, the swearing, the languages. You know, you could not let a kid play it, which is a shame, because I have let Ava drive about in a car, just driving up mountains and that kind of stuff. But it'd be great if there was an option to physically cut out all the violence and all the, you know, all the, what do you call it, the sort of the violence and the swearing, because it's such an awesome game. Anybody would have fun just driving about, you know, doing daft things and that kind of stuff. So anyway, yeah, been playing a lot of Grand Theft Auto 5. Oh, hang on, get my cup of tea. And I'm doing my best not to rift, because as I say, somebody did mention that I appear to always burp on video, and that's probably because I always have my lunch. When I'm talking, I tend to forget to breathe. So anyway, yeah. So yeah, what else I played? I had a quick game of Robotron on the MAME cab this afternoon, and I got my highest, well, it's not my highest score ever. It's my highest score on that meme cab. I got 144,000 or something. So yeah, I'm definitely going to start playing the meme cab a bit more. So yeah, that's been my week gaming wise. Just playing Grand Theft Auto 5. It's an awesome game, absolutely awesome. So yeah, anyway, I've got a wee list. Okay, right, first one. Is there a perfect length of a YouTube video? Now, I know that's obviously going to depend on the content, what it contains, etc. I'm primarily talking about, for the purpose of this, I'm primarily talking about retro, the thing that we do, retro gaming, retro video games, whatever you want to call it. Is there an optimum length of video? Now, the reason I'm asking this question was I was looking through the sort of statistics of my YouTube channel. I mean, it's something I never ever really bothered about. I've never really looked at it before. And it did make a comment that, I don't know, 86% of my subscribers don't watch all the videos to the very end. And at first I thought, oh, that's a bit shite. But then I must admit, I was thinking to myself, when I watch videos, unless it really holds my attention, I tend to maybe watch so far, and if it's not something, if I'm losing interest, then I'll switch it off. So yeah, I mean, I think when I make my sort of my mashup, not my mashup videos, when I make my Friday Waffles, when I make my Arcade Perfects, that was the year that was, things, I do try and make them last a considerable length of time. But then you don't want to go over the score. I mean, you want to give people, I was going to say value for money. I mean, you're not paying to watch this, obviously, other than your time, which is, I suppose, it's an expensive thing. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I say sometimes. I mean, I'll be honest. Sometimes I go to watch a video. Somebody's posted a video on YouTube, and it'll only be maybe 2 minutes long or a minute long, and sometimes I won't even bother watching it because I think, well, that's a waste of time. It's only a minute. How much content is it going to contain? So sometimes I will not watch a video because it's too short. Conversely, there's a dog's kicking off again. It always happens. Yeah. Conversely, if a video is an hour and a half, there's just no way I'm going to watch it for an hour and a half. I've just not got the time for that. You know, I don't think many people, unless it's a film or something, you're not going to sit and watch it for an hour and a half. So yeah, what is the optimum time for a video? What do you think, guys? In fact, I'd be interested to actually know, and don't feel embarrassed to say yes or no. I'd be interested to know how many people actually watch the end of my videos, watch my videos right through. I should actually have made this the very last comment, and then if I didn't get any comments, I would know that it was none of yous, which I wouldn't blame you anyway. But yeah, I'd just be interested to know, guys, what do you think constitutes too long a video? I mean, an hour, is that too long? I know a lot of my Arcade Perfects tend to run for about an hour. I do hope that you watch it because obviously there's something like stimulus. You're getting to see games and that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's a difficult one. You don't want to go on too long. You know, I mean, I've seen some of the videos that I make in the past, and I just prattle a lot of pish, and people are going to lose interest and switch it off. So yeah, what is an ideal length of a video? Let me have your comments, guys. Right, I'm going to pause this for a second. Okay, right, I've started the stopwatch, so I know not to talk. One thing I've noticed when I make my videos, I've just done it there, is I frown an awful lot. Now, believe it or not, I'm actually quite an upbeat, happy type of person. I do smile an awful lot. I tend not to smile very much on my YouTube channels. I mean, I notice when you make a video, YouTube automatically picks one of 3 thumbnails, and I'm always like that. My face has always got lines up here, but I am quite a happy person in real life. I just look a bit mean. Maybe it's because I've not got any hair and I've got a grey beard, I don't know. But yeah, anyway. Right, the next one. One of the subs, I can't remember offhand who it was. I do apologise. He was watching my, that was the year that was, 1979 I think it was. And he asked me, could I put in sort of like bookmarks so that you could basically click to a certain stage of a video. So for example, if I'm showing you, I don't know, Street Fighter on the Commodore 64, you can just click in the link and it'll take you straight to the C64 version. Now, I've had a wee look, Googling wise, and I've not been able to come up with anything, I mean, I don't know whether it's like a URL or something that you're clicking on. Do you create a hyperlink in the video, which then takes you to a certain stage? I do know that you can send somebody a hyperlink, and it'll have the time in it, so that if you want somebody to watch a video from like 20 minutes in, when you click on that link, it'll take you to the sort of 20-minute section. I don't know whether YouTube, whether you can put that into your own videos or something. I mean, I have seen videos before where it'll give you like a menu and you can just basically click on the particular bit of the video you want to go to. That would be really useful for Arcade Perfect My Arses. Even that was the year that was, you know, putting sort of, even dare I say, the Friday Waffle, if you want to just watch a particular bit. The only thing is, for me, it's going to add a bit of time to actually putting all that together. If it's something that I can do fairly easily, then I'll certainly do, but I've not been able to figure out how it's done. So if anybody out there knows how to kind of put bookmarks in a video so that somebody can, a viewer can just click to a specific part of the video, please let me know. I'll need to have a wee bit sort of more digging into Google to see if I can find it, but I certainly couldn't find anything that shows you that. So yeah, if anyone knows, guys, please let me know. So right, okay, that's that one. What's this for? Aye, this is just a thing I was thinking about, and I do apologise. I think I do tend to repeat some of the stuff I talk about. Yeah, one of the things I was thinking about the other day there. Do you think, I mean, if anyone's watching this video, then you're watching it because A, you either like old Scottish blokes talking pish, or else you like listening to somebody talking about retro games. Here's hoping it's the latter. Yeah, you're obviously watching that because you're into your retro gaming, you enjoy the 8-bit machines and that kind of stuff. But it's got me thinking, if a company was to release the C64, and I knew if it was to re-release the Commodore 64 or the Spectrum and sell it for 50 quid and issue software, do you think it would sell? I mean, would it be a viable market? Even like, you know, the Commodore Amiga and that kind of stuff, if they brought out a small version of the Amiga, Atari ST, whatever, and reissued it, do you think it would sell? I mean, because obviously we're all us retro gamers, we're always looking for, you know, we're always looking to, you know, for an original Commodore 64, but, you know, sometimes there's a bit of gamble when you buy something on eBay, you don't know if it's going to work, it might only work for so long. So I suppose if it was possible to buy a brand new C64 from Argos for 30 quid, then I probably would buy one. I would probably still have an original one, just for the nostalgic point of view, but I think I would probably be tempted to buy, like, you know, a new version of it. I suppose the biggest problem we'd have would be it's a fairly small marketplace. I mean, let's be honest here. The majority of people who play video games in the UK, we'll just say the UK for example, they're probably going to be, I don't know what age group, 20 to 30 years old, maybe that's the average kind of age, and they're all going to be playing FIFA 2015 on their Xbox 360, their Xbone, their excuse me, their PS4, whatever. They're simply not interested in looking at old games. You know, why would, I mean, a point I made, what was I talking about? Yeah, it was a VR I made the other day there about what games do you feel haven't aged that well, and I was talking about, well, the PlayStation 1. I personally feel that 3D games in the PlayStation 1 have aged pretty badly. They just look a pile of wank now, you know, when you actually play the things. Then I also mentioned games like Bruce Lee. I mean, Bruce Lee, it is one of my favourite games of all time. It's, you know, it's got a huge nostalgic value to me. I remember, I mean, it was pretty basic back in the day, but it was a great game to play. Now, would a game like that sell nowadays? I would think it's highly unlikely, other than to, you know, this small sort of niche part of the not part of the community, part of society. I mean, I don't know how many people. I mean, if you went into the street, into your local high street, and asked 1,000 people that walk past you, would you have you played Bruce Lee on the Commodore 64 in the last year? I would probably say out of 1,000, you'd maybe be lucky if you got maybe 5 people that have actually done it. So yeah, probably from a money making point of view, I think you probably find that these things, an old console revamped and sold, probably wouldn't sell. I mean, I suppose the whole Kickstarter thing, that's kind of similar. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to reissue old hardware. I mean, you had that thing by Elite Systems. They were going to issue a Spectrum, but it was just basically a key. It was basically a Bluetooth keyboard that you could then connect to your tablet and use. And well, I mean, that went tits up primarily because the guy that was doing it was selling all these games and he hadn't even bothered to ask for permission. So yeah, that's a bad example. But yeah, I would certainly buy something like that as long as it was priced correctly. I mean, if they were wanting £100 for a Spectrum, you know, it just wouldn't sell. If it was 20-30 quid, then people might buy it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've probably answered one question. I don't. It's possibly not something that would really be viable today. Don't know. Anyway, I'm going to pause this again. Back to it. Right, okay. Right, next one. Back in the day, or even now in fact, have you ever had like a hankering to write your own games? Did you ever partake in writing Spectrum games on your Spectrum or programming your Commodore 64? Obviously, a lot of people did. Back in the day, bedroom coders, and then they went on, you know, to get careers in the industry. Oh, excuse me a wee second, guys. Hey, sorry about that. The phone might ring again. Actually, I'm just waiting for somebody to phone me back. Yeah, what was I talking about? I was talking about, yeah, did you ever have a crack at writing your own games back in the day? And me personally, my programming never went beyond basically writing in BASIC, writing a game, you know, think a number and you had to try and it would generate a random number and it would tell you to guess the number, it would tell you whether it was higher or lower, and then it would tell you how many shots you took to actually think of the number. Yeah, I mean, I did computer studies back in the day, Christ knows when that would be, 1984 I think it was. I got a computer studies O grade, and like everybody else back then, it was on the BBC computer, and it was just you were actually writing basic, you're writing basic programs. It's funny now when you think, you know, doing computer studies back then is absolutely 100,000,000% different from what it is nowadays. I mean, really what we learned in computer studies back then is completely irrelevant now. People just don't program basic. I personally think that kids, whatever, PC owners are missing out, because programming in basic, or not even this in basic, programming at all was hugely satisfying. Like I said, I did just really wee basic kind of programs. I never did graphics or anything like that. That was way above my sort of understanding. But it was, you kind of felt quite empowered at the fact you could even do that. But that's not even a side of computers that people look at now. People look at a computer in the same way as they look at a TV. It exists purely to output something, and the purpose of a PC is whether it's to play a game, to send an email, or to go into Google. That is really what a PC's become. But back then, it was a personal computer, and you use it for things. You know, you could actually interact with it. So yeah. Excuse me. My programming never went beyond basic stuff. I did have a couple of pals. One mate. I mean, I think I told this story before. I used to own, my first computer was a Texas T1994A. And I only had one game which was written basic, and it was a pile of shite. And one of my mates was studying computer programming down at Reading, I think it was. And he came to my house one day and he wrote, well, it was like a kind of clone of Defender. The only thing was, he did it in like a couple of hours. He didn't actually get to finish the game, obviously. But what he did do was he he programmed the Defender spaceship, and you could basically move up and down, left and right, and do the fire. And it even had that wee firing where it would fire a straight laser, and then it would all kind of break up. So I mean, he kind of perfected the Defender fire, which was excellent. And I played with that for quite a while. There was no game built into it at all, but I always remember thinking, that's awesome. He's just built that from scratch. So I would love to have been able to do something like that, to program games. I mean, I always have a lot of respect when you read about, you know, in Retro Gamer, they're interviewing somebody who's written Chase HQ in the Spectrum, and they would say, how did you first get into programming? And they would say that they would buy a game and then they realised that they could probably do a better job themselves, so they decided to write a Defender game or write a Pac-Man game, whatever it was, and that would have been fantastic to be able to do something like that. Yeah, I did have another mate who was incredibly intelligent. He once wrote I think it was in machine code, he started writing an Asteroids clone on the C64. Now, Asteroids, because it's kind of vector graphics, it was incredibly hard. The C64, the processor really wasn't designed to sort of do a game like that, so he had a kind of crack at writing an Asteroids game, and again he had it was a kind of prototype, and I got to kind of test it, and it was pretty cool. I said he never got around to finishing it, but I'm sure I got a mention in the credits. It was back in the day when you put a, you know, hello to, so I got a mention in the credits thanking me for supplying the coffee to kind of keep him going. So yeah, that was that. So yeah, I never, my programming never went beyond think of a number, unfortunately, or print Alan as ace, go to 10, whatever it was, run. Always remember there was the guy that wrote Year Kung Fu on the ZX Spectrum lived about 5 minutes from me, apparently. And again, he was only just a kid. I think he was about 16, 17 years old, and I always thought, that's amazing, how can somebody do that? I mean, I'll be perfectly honest with you, even now, I'm still hugely impressed with anybody that can write a game. I mean, even something like, I'm looking at my bead art on my wall, Wave the Exploding Fist on the C64, it would now be regarded as a ancient, outdated game. But how they can program graphics, how they can program artificial intelligence, using machine code, I just don't get it. I can't grasp how you would even begin to do something like that. And don't even get me started on something like Grand Theft Auto 5. I know that's written with teams of maybe 200 people, but how you can program something like that, how it can, I mean, when you're playing these games, the level of detail is just phenomenal, and you forget that this is just ones and zeros. It's just binary that's producing all this. It's phenomenal. I mean, it's one thing making a film, getting a video camera pointing at something. Anybody can technically make a film. It might be crap, but it doesn't take much skill to make a film. You point a camera at something, you press record, then you save it, and that's your film made. But you know, to make a computer game, I think's an amazing achievement. I mean, I've a few friends who are in that industry, you know, and I take my hat off to these guys. I wouldn't even know where to begin doing something like that. So yeah, have you ever written any games of any description? It would be really interesting if anybody had written them to kind of see them running now. So yeah, I'm going to pause this once more, guys. I'm back into. Okay, guys. Apologies about that. Well, you would know I've been away for about half an hour because I've obviously paused the video. Yeah. Now, what was the next question I've got in here? Just an interesting topic. It's always one that I quite enjoy talking about, and it's a bit of a dirty subject, and it's piracy. Yeah, I'm just thinking about how piracy has evolved over the years on various systems, and I was just going to talk about the various forms of piracy that I have partaken in over the years. Let's do this in chronological order. I had my Texas T1994A. I only had one game for it, so, and I bought that. It was £4.99 or £5.99 from, I think it was Computer and Video Games. Got my Commodore 64, and again, when I first got it, I was completely oblivious to this word called piracy. I just didn't know what it was. I went up to John Menzies computer shop, and I used to buy my games. Then all that changed when I was working part-time. I was still at school, and I was working part-time in Woolco, which was like a large superstore version of Woolworths, which is sadly no more. And I was working, I used to be in charge of the trolleys, the shopping trolleys, and I was got talking to a guy who was helping me out one day, and before long we started talking about computers. It turns out he had a Commodore 64, and he told me he had something like 70, 80 games. And I'm like, what? I had something like maybe 3 or 4, you know, because I was buying games obviously. And it turns out, he says, yeah, you can come up to my house and you can copy them. So, you know, I went up to his house, and it wasn't tapes actually, it was discs. And I just, you know, started copying discs. It was fairly easy. I can't remember, there was a name of, there was a program, it was written in German I think it was, can't remember what it was called, and you basically just use that to copy discs. Obviously the C64 you could use, excuse me, you could do tape to tape. Now I never had, in fact I tell a lie, my mum and dad bought I think it was a Toshiba music centre. That's what you used to call them, as back in the day, music centres, and it had a tape to tape. But because I had my disc drive, I never really copied tapes from tape to tape at all. What I did do is I bought this thing called freeze frame, and it was a cartridge, and basically you loaded a game up, whether it was in disc, tape, whatever. You loaded it up, and then when it got to the title screen, you just press this little red button, and it would give you the option to save it. It would save the sort of the whole game in memory, and it would save it in a sort of a disc format. So yeah, that thing cost me about 70 quid back in the day, and it was a fantastic thing. I mean, even games, I still did buy games, and what I would do is I would just save it onto disc, and you could also put in a sort of menu system. So I would have maybe 4 or 5 games on a disc, and they were all like turbo loaded, so it was excellent. So when you loaded it, you got the wee menu thing, and you just press 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever it was, press the number for the game you wanted to load, and it was instant loading. So yeah, that's what I did on the C64. The Atari ST, in fact the Atari ST, again, bought all my games until a mate of mine told me about a guy that he knew that had all these pirate games, and I was later to make this guy's acquaintance. I mean, he was much younger than me. I would be 21 and he was about 14 or something. He was a bit of a brat, but you know what, he had some contacts in that scene. So he would, when a game, even before a game was released in the shops, he would have it. So usually once a week I'd go up to his house, clutching a big bundle of 50 discs, and you would just copy all the discs. It was it was absolutely mental. You'd come back home on a Friday night with about 50 new games, just mental. And these games were like 40 quid back in the day. The same thing happened on the Commodore Amiga. It was again, I did buy, and I mean, I put my hand in my heart when I see this, guys, I did buy a lot of software. But then this little guy who had the Atari ST, he had then moved on to the Commodore Amiga, and he was supplying us games, which was fantastic, all these games. But then the wee guy soon latched on to us, thinking, wait a minute, these older guys are just using me for free software. And that was basically the truth of the matter. We were getting games off him, and that was it. I think he thought it was quite cool that he had pals who were like in their 20s, and he was like, all his pals were like 14, 15, yet he had these other pals who were like in their 20s, so he thought it was quite cool. So yeah, he soon latched on to the fact that we were basically ripping him off. So that was it, we're back to just buying games again. I remember that was a bit of a sore one to swallow when you're getting games for nothing, then suddenly you're having to go back and spend 40, 50 quid. You're having to make an informed choice as to what game you wanted. Yeah, so that was that. But then things changed massively. I don't know how many months later, when one of my mates told me that there was a market through in Edinburgh, a place called Ingliston Market. Just give me 2 seconds, guys. That's fine. No, sorry. You know what? I was actually starting to doubt whether, when I pressed the button there to start recording, whether I had actually stopped recording. And I was conscious that I could be talking shite like I am right now, and it wasn't getting recorded. God forbid you didn't get to listen to this. Yeah, so anyway, what was I talking about? Yeah, Ingliston Market. And this, basically, it was an open air market. It was one of the biggest, I think it was the biggest open air markets in Europe. Massive, massive site. You know, they sold everything from, you know, leather jackets to bloody pet food to, you know, CDs, whatever it was. You know, they sold everything. You could go there, you could get yourself a leather jacket for 50 quid. I'm talking about a proper biker's jacket. You could get one for 50 quid. And it was good. Pardon me, there's the burping going on again. Yeah, it's an awesome place. But anyway, Ingliston Market started selling pirate games. And it started off, you would basically, you know, turn up at the stall, and you had all the discs just laid out as blatant as you could possibly get. You know, discs with you know, Street Fighter 2 written with a biro pen. But then shortly after, the guy cottoned well, I wouldn't say the police. I don't think the police were that interested. They cottoned on that they shouldn't be that blatant sort of thing. So what they used to do was they would put out an A4 folder with a list of games, and you basically just go down the list. Oh, can I have that? Can I have that? Can you have that? Can I have that? And they would have these pre-recorded discs underneath the table, and they were like £5 a pop. Which, you know, when you bear in mind, guys, that these games were selling for 40 quid, a paying a fiver. I think it was like, was it £3 a disc for one disc, £5 for two, and then it would kind of go up, whatever it was. So yeah, I mean, I used to go through there every single week. You would get the latest Amiga Power, look at the games you wanted, and you'd go through Ingliston Market first thing, and you would take 30 quid away, and you'd come back with 10 games, and your mate would do the same, and then you would get back to his house, you would copy his 10 games, he would copy your 10 games, whatever. So yeah, so that was the way it worked. And then later on, they got even wiser. They were basically getting rumbled with the police every week, but that never stopped them. You know, the police would confiscate the discs, but then next week you could guarantee the guys were back again. Then they became even more elaborate, where they had a sort of a legitimate stall. They would have some original games. I mean, you always found that the games that they were selling were 2 or 3 years old, so it was a dead giveaway that they were, you know, they were just there for kind of effect. But yeah, they had these like legitimate games lying on the table, but behind the table there was a wee curtain, and there was like a piece there was a piece of tarpaulin which you basically pulled back, and you just went through the back, and you were then you were then standing in a queue, you know, this sort of tarpaulined sort of walkway, and there was a queue of all these people all standing waiting to get served to buy their pirate games. And I always, as much as I loved the fact I was getting all these games for not a lot of money, I always hated being there. I always felt like, this is terrible things, I always felt like they were like scum, the people that were about you, like, oh my god, you know. But yeah, they probably thought the same as me. You know, you're frequenting with all these people who are, let's be honest, we're all thieves. You know, alright, we weren't physically stealing the software, but we were paying money to somebody who had effectively stolen the software. So yeah, you stood behind this tarpaulin thing, and then you would give your order, and they would actually, believe it or not, they actually had like 2 Amigas connected to a generator, and they would actually bloody burn or copy the discs there and then. Then that moved on, that they were getting too clever. It then became the same setup. You went behind this tarpaulin, but you gave the orders, and they would have a guy, they'd have a guy in the car park in the van, and the guy behind the tarpaulin, he would like using walkie talkies. There was no such thing as mobile phones back then. He would use the walkie talkies and tell them, right, one copy of Street Fighter 2, one copy of Eye of the Beholder 2, and a copy of Dungeon Master 2. So they would like radio through your order, and then you would obviously take your money, and that was it. So yeah, that was that. Then things started to change. The Amiga started to phase out, and the what do you call it? The PlayStation, the consoles really kicked in. I mean, I believe the PlayStation probably must be one of the highest piracy rates of any machine. I mean, when I first got my PlayStation, we discovered there's a place called the Barras in Glasgow, and it's an open air market, and it's basically people with not a lot of money would go and sell stuff, and people with not a lot of money could go and buy stuff. So you would get like 10 tins of beans for 50 pence and things like that. But once people cottoned on the money that could be made out of piracy, I mean, I could quite easily have sold pirate games, and I've got to put my hand on my heart, swear against my daughter's life, I have never ever sold a pirate game in my life. I've given away a lot, I don't mind admitting that, but I've never ever profited. I mean, I've got, morally, I think that's completely wrong. I know it's not right buying pirate software, but I would never ever contemplate making a living out of selling software. I just wouldn't do that. That just goes against the grain with me. But yeah, you go to this Barras market, and the PlayStation must have only been out for, I don't know, maybe 6 months, something like that. And one of my mates who had the PlayStation as well, he phoned me and he says, you can get this computer chip, put in a console. And back then, getting something chipped, you'd never heard of that phrase before. So we drove through on his motorbike to the Barras, and sure enough, we handed over our PlayStation. I mean, you've got to remember, back in the day, I mean, I paid 350 quid for a PlayStation. That included a game. I think it was Destruction Derby. You were handing over this £300 console. Now, £300 back in 1994, 95. That was a shitload of money. £300 was probably £600 nowadays, something like that. So yeah, you were handing over this hugely expensive piece of kit to, let's be honest, a guy you didn't know if you had him, this little tow rag. But anyway, we went to the Barras, handed over our PlayStations. We were told to come back in an hour. So we basically handed over these expensive bits of kit. We then went away for a cup of tea, and basically trusting these guys that they were going to be there when we got back. And sure enough, we got back, and the guy had our PlayStations all chipped. I think it was £80 I paid, which was a lot of money. But to suddenly have opened up this unending collection of games was phenomenal. So yeah, we got these things chipped. I mean, probably about a year later, everybody in their auntie could fit a chip to a PlayStation. Apparently it was fairly easy. I think it was only a couple of wires you had to solder. So everybody had the PlayStation chipped. So yeah, we used to go to Ingleston Market, and they were doing it again. I think it was a £5 a disc or something. £5 a CD, that's what you're paying for a game. And again, bear in mind guys, that these games were sort of 40-50 quid a pop. It was value for money. So yeah, that's how we got our games for the PlayStation. And then I must admit, I mean, after the PlayStation, that's when you started to get, 2-3 years later, we had the internet. And then 2-3 years later after that, we had broadband. I mean, it wasn't the quickest broadband, but you could then, there was no such thing as torrent sites. It was used to be news groups that I used to use. You could go into a news group, and you could download a PlayStation game in maybe like 4 hours, something like that. So here you are, for 4 hours worth of internet time, you were getting a game 30-40 quid for basically the price of a CD. So yeah, you basically just grab these kind of games yourself. It's mental to think how things have evolved. I mean, even now, like, I mean, I've emailed like a Commodore 64 game to a mate. That's just bizarre. How can you email a game? I mean, back in 1985, it was all about, tape to tape and that kind of thing. And to think that you could email a game is just absolutely cuckoo. And we're going to pause it one more time, guys. Okay, guys. Let's see. I've only got one more, well, kind of two more things to talk about. Now this one I've already. Actually, I was going over some videos that I've kind of uploaded previously, and this was something I spoke about before, but it's kind of a relevant thing. It's become a bit more relevant to me recently, and that is, what did I actually say it? When does a retro collection become too big? I mean, I think there's two ways to think about this. As I've always maintained, I'm not a collector. I don't collect video game systems. I do happen to own a lot of them, but that's because I buy them to play them. So, every system I've got, and I know that's not entirely true, every system that I can own, I do try and play. There's a few systems that I own, things like, up there I've got the Master System. Now, I've probably got about, I don't know, I can't see, I've probably got about 30 games for it. And I've never played it once. And you probably say that's crazy why you've even got it. The reason I don't play it is because I can play the Master System games on my Mega Drive, or I can play them on the main cab, whatever. So it's just an inconvenience thing. But in the main, every system that I've got, I play. So I don't collect. I don't buy a game just to have it in the collection. So based on that thinking, if you only buy games like myself to play, then your collection of games is going to get to the biggest size possible pretty quick, because you can't possibly play 10,000 games or whatever. If you're a collector whereby you just want to have the box on show, then technically I suppose your collection could be a lot bigger, because all you're doing is you're buying it, it's going in a shelf so you can look at it, it's all very nice and that sort of thing. But if you're buying games to play, then I mean, I'm looking up here at the moment. I mean, I've just got a stupid number of games. I really have. The number of games that I've got that I've just simply never played. So yeah, I would say my collection right now is way too big. Don't get me wrong. I love being able to just stand up and taking a game off the shelf and just looking at it. I love that aspect of it. If I had, I think I've touched on this before, up in my loft I have got, I've got about 10 big plastic case things, and in them I've got different consoles. I think I've got about 2 Amigas, I've got a 1200, I've got several Ataris, I've got Atari ST, I've got Mega Drives, I've got a SNES, I've just got all manner of stuff up there. And I've also got, I would say, yeah, I might have a couple hundred games up in the loft as well. I've got C64 games, I've got Spectrum games, I think I've got a couple of Amiga games as well. I have got, what else? I've got loads of SNES games, and I've got stacks of Mega Drive games. Now I've got an EverDrive for my Mega Drive. So an EverDrive for the Mega Drive, yeah, that's right. Excuse me, are you saying? Oh, stone cold. Yeah. So I don't bother. I don't need the Mega Drive games because I've got them already. So yeah, but the point I'm trying to make here is, if I had a huge big house with a massive big basement, out of all the games on display, I would love to be able to be in a position where I could just have every single system. I would have my Master System set up with a TV. I would have all these old systems connected to CRT TVs, none of this LCD shite. Yeah, in an ideal world I would have all these systems set up, all the games on show, but that's not going to happen unless I win the lottery. That's just never going to happen. So yeah, where does a collection start getting too big? I think when you get to a stage where you can't physically play all the games, then it's too big. Interestingly, I've got a couple of sort of friends. There's there's a guy from the Retro Club, I've mentioned this again before, he has got the largest collection of stuff that I've ever seen in my life. I mean, he's got 2 big bedrooms and they're jam packed. There's nothing else in the bedrooms other than shelves and cupboards, and they're jam packed with tens of thousands of games, and these are all original games. He's got some really obscure systems. He's got the Commodore, it's the Commodore with the built-in screen, not the PET, it's a Commodore 64. He's got all stuff like that. But again, about 6 months ago, he just decided that he'd had enough of collecting, because it was becoming a point where he couldn't even think about moving house because of his collection. So he decided one day enough's enough, and he sold off an awful lot of stuff. I've bought a few bits and pieces like the PC Engine games and the Game King, which I featured in a hardware video, but I've since got rid of that because it's total crap. But then I've got another mate online. I've known this guy Matt for 10 years, and Matt he's got probably the most comprehensive Commodore 64 collection of anybody anywhere, and I mean worldwide. He does a lot of articles for Retro Gamer. He's got something like 500 cartridges alone for the C64. He's just got these immense collections. But I think he's now getting into the stage of thinking, wait a minute, I mean, he's you know, if he ever like settles down, and you know, I think he currently shares a house with his brother or something. But he's thinking if he ever settles down with, you know, a girl and they get their own place, he couldn't even imagine what it'd be like to try and move his collection. He says it would just be an absolute logistical nightmare, and he's now starting to think about downsizing. I mean, he's got a lot of like really super rare games, seriously rare stuff. So yeah, and he's talking about getting rid of a lot. I mean, I think he's got like complete collections of GameCube. He's got every Vectrex, every version of every game ever released on the Vectrex. He's got all the homebrew games that have ever been released. So he's got complete collections of a lot of systems, and I think he's looking to starting to kind of sell off the stuff that's taking up a lot of space. But yeah, I've been thinking for the last wee while about starting to maybe sell off stuff, because the problem you've got, the more stuff you've got, the less likelihood you've actually got of using what you do have. Because I mean, I'm looking at the shelves there, and I've got games lined up, and I've got stuff on top of boxes on top of the games, and I've got stuff on top of the boxes on top of the games, which means you can't even see half the stuff that I've actually got. So it just becomes too much. You can't even see what you've actually got. Yeah, I mean, I suppose possibly the job situation just now. You're thinking about money and that. And you're thinking, well, I could maybe, you know, make a few quid. But I do know that if I started selling off some of this stuff, I mean, I've got nothing that's of any real value. I mean, probably my Virtual Boy and my Vectrex, or the main cab, alright, that's worth, I don't know what it's worth, maybe £500, £600, £700 or something. But you know, I've got nothing of any real high value. And at the end of the day, if you sold that, the money would soon be frittered away, kind of thing. But yeah, I've certainly thought about downsizing my collection, especially stuff up in the loft. I mean, what is the purpose of having stuff sitting in a loft? You know, just makes no sense. Anyway, I'm absolutely prattling on here, guys. The very last thing I want to touch on, and it's quite relevant today, and it's this Black Friday. What the fuck's that all about? I gather it's an American term. It's something that happened in America. And as much as I love America, I've got a lot of American friends. I mean, I was in the States on holiday. It's an amazing country. Why is the UK obsessed with trying to mimic America? You know, my daughter doesn't go out guising, which is that an English word as well? Guising means to go dress up at Halloween and go out. No, they don't go guising, they go trick-or-treating. We're trying to adopt all these Americanisms, and I think this Black Friday thing is something similar. But I was watching a video today that somebody had posted on Facebook, and it was taken in an Asda somewhere in Scotland. I don't know where it was, and it was basically two guys fighting over. They were actually fighting over a TV. I mean, seriously, I've not even, because I mean, there's nothing that I'm interested in buying Now, fine, if you're looking to buy a new TV, if you're in the market for a new TV, then it would make sense to go and see what you can get in this Black Friday sale. But far too many people, they don't have the money, they've got no requirement or need for a new TV, and they go to bloody Asda at midnight and they end up fighting in a queue to get a TV that's got 200 quid, say, you know, £200 off the price. I mean, I'm completely guilty in the past of buying stuff because it's a bargain. I mean, one of my mates, he was forever emailing me during the day at work and saying, oh, you can get this miniature video camera for 20 quid, and I'm like, oh, that looks brilliant, go and get me one. So I would end up giving him 20 quid for this little camera, and it would bloody sit and never get used. The amount of stuff, DVDs, stuff that I bought over the years that I never used, but I got it because it was a bargain. And as anybody knows, a bargain, no matter how much you're saving, if you don't use it, it's a complete waste of money. And you know, so yeah, this Black Friday thing, I just don't get it. But what really sickens me is seeing the greed and the lack of compassion and I don't know, just treating other people with respect, fighting over things because they must have this thing. One of my friends actually made a post on Facebook, and I know it's a bit, you could say a bit sickly and whatever, but he said to anybody thinking about going out and buying something on Black Friday, why buy something you don't need? Why don't you go and spend 20 quid and buy a brand new toy, wrap it up and take it to some children's refuge place where there's kids who possibly their parents are no longer here, whatever it is, and they're not going to get anything at Christmas. Go and spend 20 quid and buy a present for a child and you'll feel 100 times better. And I think, yeah, I mean, I've not done that, but I wasn't going to go and buy on Black Bloody Friday, but yeah, you know, that there's a lot of sense in that. Just wondering, guys, don't get me wrong, I'm not shooting anybody down that's going and bought a bargain. If there's something you've been after, then by all means go and get it. But it just sickens me when I see the way, the attitude of some people, the lengths they'll go to get something, and fuck what anybody else thinks, you know what I mean? So anyway guys, listen, that is it. I think I've discussed everything I want to discuss. I've probably been rabbiting on way too long once again. I do apologise in advance. That's it. Coming up, there's going to be more. In fact, I made a mistake in last week's waffle. Mondays are going to be That Was the Year That Was. Wednesdays are going to be Arcade Perfect My Arse, and Fridays are going to be the Friday Waffle. That's how it's going to be with, what do you call it, VRs and 10-minute mashups in between as well. There's a couple other ideas I can't remember offhand. I do apologise now, I can't remember offhand. One of the guys said to me, why don't you do a sort of not an Arcade Perfect My Arse, but do a feature where you're featuring unlicensed versions of games. So maybe take Pac-Man and I'll look at Puck-Man or Pink-Man, whatever, just look at unofficial clones of games. So that's something that I think would be quite, you know, would be quite interesting to do. But I've got enough on the go at the moment. I mean, you probably appreciate, guys, these ones that I'm doing just now, it does take up a fair bit of time to actually record them and edit them and put it in and that sort of thing. So that's definitely one I'm going to think about for the future. If there's anything else, one thing I have thought about doing is a one-off, and it's maybe me being egotistical, and it doesn't mean to be like this, but I've often thought about doing a one-off question and answer thing. If there's anything that you particularly want to know about me, that sounds really arrogant, doesn't it? And I don't mean it to be like that, but if there's anything that you want to know about me or my thoughts about different things, I was thinking about having a one-off, putting your questions below and I'll do a response to sort of the questions that people are asking. But have a think, guys. If you think that's a good idea, let me know. That is it, I think. That is all I can talk about. So again, apologies for prattling on way too long. I hope you enjoyed watching it. Please subscribe if you want to see more videos by my good self. And as usual, guys, have a great weekend. If it's the weekend, I hope you're having a good weekend. And if it's long after the weekend, I hope you had a great weekend. And as usual, guys, thanks for watching.